Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in today. So I'm going to be giving you my top 10 tips to hopefully try and get your CPL qualifying cross-country flight done. So before I get started, don't forget, if you find this useful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. So I've been doing an hour building series all week, and one of the things that I wanted to touch on was also how you can try and get your qualifying cross-country done. Now, in no particular order, I'll get straight in. So number 10, try to do your qualifying cross-country flight when the days are long. Now, I know that sounds fairly obvious, but what tends to happen is modular pilots do their flight training and hour building all the way throughout the year. So you might find somebody that starts their hour building in, for example, August, towards the end of the UK summer, as I did myself. And they'll get through September just doing small flights, get through October, again, similar thing. They'll say, oh, I'll do my hour building and qualifying cross-country flight towards the end of my hour building. Now, the end of the hour building might fall in February when the weather is going to be really poor. So it may make sense to do your qualifying cross-country flight slightly early on or earlier on in your hour building, provided, of course, that it's safe and legal to do so, rather than waiting right till the end when the weather is going to be poor. So for number 2, this sounds really obvious, but you need to have access to an aircraft to be able to do this. So what do I mean by that? Well, a lot of hour building guys will typically be in the club environment and will just book the aircraft for a certain time in the day, maybe a morning or an afternoon or something like that. Now that's okay, but unfortunately with the variability of the weather and your time and so on and so forth, if you can find a situation that allows you access to an airplane, you know, for a week or for a month or whatever, that will make the chances of a successful CPL qualifying cross-country more likely, just because you're not then waiting for other people to bring the aircraft back, or you're not limited on a good day and because the aircraft's not available, and so on and so forth. So for that, you might want to consider a no equity scheme or purchasing an hour building package, or even buying a share in an airplane. There are many different ways to achieve having an access to your own airplane. So for the third one is Recce, the airfields that you hope to visit on your hour building qualifying cross-country flight. Now that sounds maybe a little bit obvious, or, you know, is it really necessary? Well, it just takes away some of the newness and some of the variability on what will be quite a long and challenging day for you flying anyway. For me, it certainly helps. Just as an example, my qualifying cross-country, I went from Blackpool to Taton Hill and then to Duxford and then back. I hadn't been to Taton Hill before, so I went to Taton Hill one day and then went back to Blackpool, and then I hadn't been to Duxford before, and then I went to Duxford on another day and then flew back to Blackpool. So on the day when it came to connecting those three, I was quite familiar with all of them. I knew where my refueling stops were going to be. I knew what the procedure for refueling was going to be at these airfields. And again, you're probably going to be limited on time, and it's going to be a long enough day anyway. So you don't want to arrive somewhere new and have to start scratching your head thinking, right, where do I sign in? Where do I pay my landing fee? How do I order fuel? And all these sort of things. So my fourth one is pick airfields for your qualifying cross-country that are relatively low elevation. The reason for that is obvious. Is the higher the elevation of the airfield, the more likely the chances you're going to have weather issues. So picking a low airfield elevation is great, because what that means is if the cloud base is marginal, let's say it's 2,500 feet, if the airfield is at sea level, pretty close to sea level, then that's probably enough for you to get there safely and get back out. But if you picked an airfield that's 600 feet above the ground, then yeah, on a day where the cloud base everywhere else is 2,500 feet, you're only going to have, you know, 1,800, 1,900 feet at that particular airfield. So that will improve the chances of giving you the opportunity window to do your CPL qualifying cross-country. So my fifth one is don't wait for the perfect weather conditions all over the place. Now, I'm not saying go out and fly when the weather is marginal VFR and it's not very good, or you've got extremely strong winds. I don't mean, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, you know, I've seen some pilots who are trying to get their qualifying cross-country done, but they won't go because there is, you know, prob 30 chances of something that's probably not really going to affect their flight somewhere halfway across the country. So have a look at it. I mean, when I did my qualifying cross-country, when I set off initially on my first leg, the weather at the second airport wasn't quite good enough for me to go there. So I set off anyway to my first destination, which was Taton Hill, and I said to myself, I'll get to Taton Hill, assess the weather for Duxford, and then make a decision then. By the time I got to Taton Hill, the weather at Duxford is lifted and it was really a glorious day, and then I continued on. Now, the lesson I learned there was if I hadn't set off on my first leg to Taton Hill thinking, oh, the weather at Duxford isn't good enough, I wouldn't have got the flight done that day, just because by the time the weather had cleared up, it would have been too late for me to get going. So yeah, absolutely. Don't do anything dangerous and unsafe though, but you know, you can always turn back if things don't work out. Don't wait for the perfect day. So for number 6, it's a very obvious one, but make sure you are well rested. It's going to be a pretty long day anyway, so the last thing you want is to turn up to the airfield tired and struggle all the way throughout the day and potentially get yourself into an unsafe situation. So my number 7 is start early. Get to the airfield early so you can get all your pre-planning done, you can get the aircraft ready, and if there's any issues that come out, for example, there's a NOTAM showing a temporary ATC closure, you can work around it and it's not going to affect your day too much. So my number 8 is keep turning up to the airfield even if the weather doesn't look good. Now again, I'm not saying go and fly when it's not safe to do so, absolutely not. But I had a number of days during my hour building flights that the night before I'll check the weather and it looked completely appalling, but then by the morning I'll check and the weather forecast was completely different and it actually ended up being a really good day. You won't be able to take advantages of these weather windows if you're not at the airfield to fly. And you never know, just making the effort and turning up that one day might make the difference between you getting your qualifying cross-country done and being able to get your hour building done and moving on to your CPL and IR courses, or being delayed by 2 or 3 months because the weather turns and you just don't find the weather window. My number 9 would be definitely get a night rating, and if you can, an IMC rating. The night rating will reduce the time pressure that you have during the day when you're doing your qualifying cross-country, because if it starts to get dark, it doesn't matter, you can do the last bit of your flight at night. And having the IMC rating, okay, I'm not, suggesting that you launch into poor weather as a regular thing. Absolutely not. You want to remain safe and legal at all times. But that said, if you have a autumnal day, typical for us in the UK, where we've got a little bit of low clouds that eventually burns off by midday, you don't have to wait until the low cloud is completely dispersed. So for example, if it's broken at 900 feet, you can climb through the layer and continue on and do what you need to do. But once again, stay safe and only do things that are legal and safe to do so. Number 10. I never thought I would actually say this, but the ATPL Met weather that you taught is actually a really good thing. And one of the tools I'd encourage you to get proficient at is just building up a picture of what the weather looks like across the UK or wherever it is that you're flying. And the reason for that is it will allow you to be able to then read the weather much better and exploit the weather opportunities with confidence later on. So what do I mean by that? Even if you're not flying every day, just check the weather, look at the charts and just have a think and say, well, what do I reckon is going to be happening in this part and this part, and then compare that with what you think is going to happen versus what actually happens later on, and so on and so forth. And you'll start to build up an ability to be able to read what the weather is going to be doing, and what that'll help you to do is just be a bit more aggressive in terms of your planning. And again, don't do anything unsafe, absolutely not, but if the weather's bad in the south, you'll have the confidence to know I can go north and I'll be completely fine. Or if the weather's bad in the north, you have the confidence that I can go south. Or if the weather's bad in certain areas, improving later but getting worse in other areas, then you can plan your flights and your qualifier across that. But again, please stick to the rules and stay legal. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the page.